Hey, it's Jordan. I'm delighted to be joined by Red Terry, a Virginia resident on Bent Mountain, who I interviewed years ago. You and your daughter several years ago took action and protested on your property at the top of your trees to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline from cutting down those trees and going through your property against your will. When you're talking about pipelines going under this kind of land, if there's an explosion, the blast radius could be potentially
2.5 miles.
Everything will be dead in 2.5 miles. And that's all but my son. And if he's visiting, that wipes us out. I mean, my sister-in-laws both live in town, and my brother-in-law's up here, some and some not. So that will wipe out the seventh generation of Terrys, pretty much. 2.5 mile, that's all my friends, all my neighbors, and all my family.
You're in Virginia, like so many Virginians and West Virginians. Your land was going to be stolen, basically, for this pipeline, which, in my view, is unnecessary. You were up there for 30 days, and now we have this pipeline which has been killed several times through permits being rejected and other failures, has now been basically approved through the back door, thanks to President Biden and the Democrats ramming it and including it in this debt ceiling deal to basically stroke Joe Manchin's back. Joe Manchin has wanted this pipeline for many years, and it seems that Biden, in order to get Manchin's vote on previous legislation, the Inflation Reduction Act, promised that he would help get this pipeline through that had been rejected and whose permits had been rejected time and time again. Let's just move backwards. Remind the audience how you first learned about this pipeline, what made you and your family so opposed to it, and what made you protest on your own property atop your trees?
We found out about it when we had people come knocking on our door telling us they were going to pay us money to use part of our land. And the guy said, yeah, we're just looking around. We're thinking of running a pipeline through here. And we laughed at him because we're like, do you know anything about these mountains? They're harsh. And I didn't think they were going to go this route. I thought they would do some homework. But I told the guy, I said, it would be kind of like me selling you my daughter and watching you torture and rape her every day. And you and your company and your bosses don't have enough money in this world to buy this land. So they just took it. They just took it. That was, I found out they were going to go through Floyd, and they found out they would have to go through like 1,600 people and settle with 1,600 people. So they went to the maps to find the large landowners. And all 4 Terrys have land up here connected. So they hit, actually, and my mother-in-law, they hit us all. They hit all the Terrys because they figured it would be an easy battle. And so far with the court systems, for them, it has been an easy battle. They just do what they want, take what they want. I went up in the tree. They were supposed to, they could cut the trees down through March, and then they had to leave the forest alone because of the nesting birds. Well, March came and they kept cutting. And I said, they're going to just keep going. So I said I was going in a tree, and actually Next thing I know, my daughter's calling it, the rest of the family, and she went up the tree. My son actually had a tree set, but they knew how to rappel down, and they would rappel down late night and get up, come down, shower, get warm, and then go back up like 5 in the morning. And when my son went back, his tree set was surrounded by cops. So he was out. But my son actually spent every night under my daughter's tree to make sure she was okay. And some of those nights were 19 degrees,
Right.
thunderstorms, just ugly. And, if they'd have left me alone, I would have probably come down eventually because it was cold. But then they surrounded me and pretty much forced me almost to stay up in the tree.
Right.
I mean, I'm on my property in my tree when they're not supposed to be cutting. And then they surround me and charge me with 3 misdemeanors and label me a domestic terrorist because I'm not letting them run all over me.
And we're threatening you with fines of, what was it, $1,000 a day?
Yeah. My daughter and I both would have to pay $1,000 a day for every day that we were up there past when the judge said we had to come down. And it was, do I look dangerous? I mean, I've got a temper, but do I really look dangerous? They surrounded me with 2 MVP guards, 2 state police, and 2 Roanoke County cops 24/7. And I guess I'm just that big of a threat to, get all that attention. I was just like, wow, they are blowing this way out of proportion. You're not supposed to be cutting trees after March. I had whippoorwills sing me to sleep every night. And I love whippoorwills. I've always loved whippoorwills. And the spot I had chosen, there were just hundreds of them. And when they cut my trees down, I was still in the tree when they cut my trees down. And I still have nightmares about hearing those trees crack and drop. And they had 2 teenagers running in front of the chainsaws, looking up. Now, you can lay in your yard and look up in a tree, and it'll take you an hour and a half to find a bird nest. But these kids were jogging through the woods, giving the chainsaws a chance, letting them know they could go ahead and cut. Well, they dropped all my trees, but the whippoorwills lay their eggs on the ground. And I have a lot fewer whippoorwills now.
Right.
But it's ridiculous.
And I think it's also important because the media is just, if they're even reporting that this pipeline's included in the deal, that they're just making it sound like it's just like any other pipeline. But you're talking about a methane fracked gas pipeline going up mountains through multiple states, the steepest slopes in the country, thousands of waterways. And if and when it explodes, and I would say when it explodes, folks like you are in the blast zone. From my memory, that blast zone is 2.5 miles, not to mention the leaks, because all these pipelines leak. Can you talk about the threat? I mean, I don't know if you feel this is dramatic, but if it were me, I would kind of feel like I have a ticking time bomb under my home on a mountain, because you live on a mountain.
You know, if we can't get this overturned, it is a death sentence for me. My friend just sent me pictures on the Elliston side. If you cross Poor Mountain, you're on the Elliston side. And she had pictures of a slope that they have cut that is a 90-degree drop straight down that they plan on running the pipe. The slope up here, my neighbor, they had to daisy chain 3 or 4 pieces of equipment to dig the trenches on her land. And she said she overheard the workers saying, "Who the hell picked this place anyway? We can't even stand up." From what I understand, they've put the pipe in the trenches, but they haven't welded them. They were working off of the parkway a couple of years ago when they could work. And our parkway's been closed for almost 2 years now because the road gave out where they blasted nearby, and shortly after our road gave out on the parkway, so people can't even get on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We've had an organic farm, the Four Corners in Franklin County, Carolyn Riley. They did go through her water before they stopped it. And her whole farm is nothing but a flood now. They completely destroyed her farm. She almost had a nervous breakdown and she moved further up into Floyd. You know, but to take that piece of your life that you know, all the planning and all the money that went into her life, and they just destroyed that piece of land. People don't understand. We're in an earthquake zone. I have one DEQ that still works for DEQ up here. I have 2 retired DEQ people up here. And they said where they're blasting is on a fault line up here. And our current DEQ agent, when he went to the main office and said, "Listen, guys, you really shouldn't. I mean, there's going to be a lot of problems up here if you do this." They told him he was not to speak about the Mountain Valley again and to stay the hell away from it, or he would lose his job. I mean,
And
the girl
that's an official from the state environmental official who was basically told to shut up.
Yes. When Northam was in office and we had, was it the Water Control Board or something? We had a girl there because we all went and spoke and said, "No, this is a bad idea." And she was fairly newish, and she said, "Well, I would like to check it out myself. I would like to go see what they're talking about," because everybody else blew us off. They fired her. And she made it up here after she was fired, and she wrote an article in the paper that said, "This is the biggest screw up in the world." She said, "This pipeline can't be built safely." But, you know, when you have opposition, you fire them. I got in trouble for being in the tree, but last year they started blasting on my property. And now we have tier 3 water up here, which is the cleanest water you can get.
And have you been dealing with NextEra, the owner of the pipeline? Do they consult you before they do the blasting, or they just come in and do it?
They were supposed to give us, I think, 24-hour heads up. They never called us. I happened to be off from a surgery, and I was able to go out in my car and watch them. I couldn't walk because surgery was on my foot. I couldn't really walk, but I could follow them in my car and sit in my car. But they had started drilling holes that the water was shooting up out of the holes as they were drilling it. And when they would leave for the day, I would take a stick out there and measure the water in the holes. I had 7 to 11 feet of water in every hole. And the one that was 11 feet deep was where they had chipped away probably 12, 14 feet of a slope to get it even. And when I stuck my pole down that hole, I never hit bottom. But my stick was 11 feet long.
Jesus.
So they came over and started putting bags on it to dynamite it. And I stepped up in the way. And I said, this is the hill I die on. You cannot dynamite my water. And my husband was at the courts. My lawyer was at the courts, the judge, their lawyers. And they said, okay, we won't blast it. Well, they blasted the one up from it, which stupid me had never checked to see if there was water in that one. But they blasted the one right above it. And then the next week, they brought 2 drilling machines down and just started drilling where I had 30 holes they were going to blast. I now have about 130 holes because now they're just going to bring the equipment right through and just scoop up the rock. And then they're going to lay the pipe in the standing water. And they can't even drive in it. They had to build a bridge because their equipment kept sinking. And this was marked a wetland. And they were not allowed to go through the waters yet because every time they went through the water, they screwed up everything so bad. So I stopped them. I finally paid the lawyer off. They wanted to bring me in for a deposition, and I said, let's go. And they went, oh, no. I went, I'm probably the most honest person in the world, so go ahead. It's not like I have to remember any lies. Go ahead and let me talk. And they subpoenaed Facebook. They subpoenaed my text messages. They also did that to my friend. So our lawyers subpoenaed the people that were working, and we got their text messages. And when my lawyer read them, he was pretty happy. And when he showed them to MVP went, oh no, these can't be used here. This is all privileged and you can't use this stuff. Sorry, I've got son. And
That's
they
all right.
said, they kind of fined me, or I know they dropped the case. I just had to pay my lawyer because we
what were
caught
some of the
them.
things in those text messages?
Yes, they they were having a good time that day. So, but my friend Maury, who's been in DC for months, going and talking to Congress people, and he hasn't been able to drink his water since 2021. And he had wonderful water in West Virginia, and they blasted on his property. He can no longer do his laundry. He can't drink his water. And they don't care. My neighbor up here, Mary Beth, they're coming within 200 feet of her house. I mean, I've got a little bit of a field between me and it, 200 yards maybe, but that's not going to save me from anything. The pipes that they brought in, that's why they got the quick take. They had no licenses, but they had already ordered the pipe, and they brought it in, and they went to our judge and said, the pipe can't be out for longer than 6 months. It's got to be turned. It's got to be treated. It's got to be all this. And we need to get started. So our judge, who used to be a lawyer for the energy sector,
Of course.
said, oh, by all means, go ahead and start cutting trees and do a quick take. Yeah, you've got my permission. Well, that pipe has been sitting in water for 5, 6 years now. It's all sitting along the row. You know, Manchin making all his lies up. Yes, you know, all week about this pipeline, and they are lies. But we have pipes, and all of them are from India or China.
Hmm.
And they're all rusting, and they're peeling. And now with no intervention, they can plant those pipes. My brother worked for Exxon in Texas. He was, oh God, I'm going blank. He was your animal control for the birds on the refineries. But in the floods and stuff, he would do the alligators. He took care of the wild boars. He did the poisonous snakes. But he was around gas and oil people all the time. And he said, when you put a 90-degree turn in this pipeline, in this pipe, it weakens the joint.
Right.
I have 3 90-degree turns within a half a mile on my property. And at 1,400 pounds pressure, there's no way it's not going to blow. And see, Manchin said this was the most scrutinized project in the world. I mean, it's been scrutinized forever. You know, if this thing could have been built safely, it would have been built. If everything they didn't screw up, this would have been built. And the people that are doing this have a record for doing a shoddy job.
Right.
When they
Let me ask you, you know, the people, you know, supporters of President Biden, kind of your typical rah-rah Democrats are kind of cheering for this deal, saying Biden kind of outmaneuvered the Republicans. Yeah, they don't like everything in the deal, but overall it could have been worse. Very few of them are even mentioning this pipeline. It seems to me that most of them are very disconnected from Appalachia and are willing to kind of make you a sacrifice zone because it ain't going through their land up in New York or DC or wherever. What are your thoughts on, it seems like most of the reaction among kind of partisan Democrats is cheers for President Biden. He ran on environmental justice. This does not seem like that.
You know, the way Manchin painted it as, oh, we're going to get power here. You know, we're going to get gas here. We're going to get gas there. And prices are going to drop. And that's not true. You know, we got gouged during the pandemic, and it wasn't because of the pricing or the shortages. It was because the opportunity was there. And so they made record profits off of the back of suffering people. This is not going to help either. And once this was built, this is a 42-inch. They wanted to take it through Southgate to get it to the ports for export. And see, Manchin wanted this before the war. And then when the war started in Ukraine, he's like, oh, well, this is a new excuse because now we can help out our neighbors with their gas problems. So this was, since the day of inception, was going for export. But now they're saying, oh, no, it's not. We don't need that much gas. And the Democratic Party that thinks this is a good deal, you know, we haven't, everybody's got their own news popping up. You know, they've got their mass shootings. They've got their, you know, people trying to blow up infrastructure and power plant. You know, everybody's got their own problems. And nobody wants additional problems. Although we have supporters in Alaska, California, pretty much all over the country have been helping us fight this pipeline. But it's just not, it's not out there. People don't see what we see and we've experienced. You know, a professor at Virginia Tech that teaches construction said something when this project started. He said, you can control sediment on a 30-degree grade. That's it. Then water goes where it wants to. And the permits that kept getting rejected by our Fourth Circuit, they kept submitting the same information. They never found a solution to how they were going to control sediment, because there was no way to control sediment because they're going on 80 and 85-degree grades. It can't be done. You know, my husband works in construction, and he's been there for years. He's a civil engineer, degree from VMI. He has to have someone come in and look at the foundation when they put it in. He's got someone come in, check out the water when he puts it in. He's got electrical people coming in. He's got safety people coming in. He cannot get his final until the whole building has been through all the inspections. And what they just did to us was said, screw the safety, screw everything, just build it. I have a beaver pond right in their way, and they're just going to plow right through it. I've got a logging road when we had gypsy moths, and they found that logging road and decided they were going to use it. They're going to take Minor, my daughter's, whole front yard and gravel it because they want to have two-way traffic for their trucks. They're going to take one of my hayfields as a laydown yard, and then they're going to cut out another 30 feet up into my mountains and level them off. And I have streams coming out of them, springs, right in, and that all downhill goes into that tier 3 creek.
And they've already, I remember from when I interviewed you there, and I came there and reported, I remember years ago, they had already cut down all these trees on your property before. There was one area that it was just a whole field of massive, beautiful trees that had been cut down. You couldn't even walk because you were tripping over trees. So all of this carnage is before the pipeline has even been fully built or operational. And like you said, not really for the use in Virginia or West Virginia, but to send to mostly other countries.
Yeah. I feel like Biden has really betrayed everybody on his word about transitioning. This has been in the works for almost 9 years now. Has anyone gone, man, I wish we'd had that gas from MVP? Not a person has said that, you know? And this is, you know, the gas company they won again. They'll try to put this in, and it's going to be like that brand new one a couple years ago that made it, 6 months before it blew up. Only this time, you still have the gypsy moth damage from up on the mountain where you got oaks standing dead, and the ash borer, which the trees are falling right and left right now because it has killed every ash on the mountain. And the trees are falling in the roads, they're falling in our yards, they're falling all over the mountain. That's just kindling. So, you know, you got 20 miles between cutoff valves of a 42-inch, 1,400-pound pressure. So when it blows, you know, it's going to burn most of the top of the mountain, probably into Floyd, into Elliston. There's nothing you can do. Excuse me. So
what do you say to, because obviously other places have kind of been made sacrifice zones. You see what's going on in East Palestine, Ohio, with the railroad exploding and them detonating the train, and the residents are sick. You look at Flint, nearly a decade later, people are still sick. The water's still contaminated. So many other environmental calamities, other pipelines have exploded and caused havoc. Plants are on fire, causing contamination in communities. And somehow it doesn't really seem like there's much governmental pushback on these corporations causing it. Maybe a fine here and there, but certainly no one's going to prison. And now in this debt deal that they pushed this pipeline through, they even took out judicial review, so you can't even go through the courts. I mean, did you ever think that this kind of stuff would be happening in America?
No. We've known Manchin wanted this through. We've known Gas and Oils wanted this through. We've known that they will walk all over anyone they can. We've known that from the get-go. But to take away any protection against what they're going to do, we can't take them to court. You know, we can't. You know, if they destroy Bottom Creek, which feeds Salem and which feeds Roanoke, their drinking water, well, I guess Roanoke and Salem are screwed too. I mean, it's unheard of to not have oversight on such a big project that they can just come in and do. Hey, they've already told me after I stopped their water, the judge already said, well, if we have to blast again on Terry's property, we'll make sure we send the marshals up there to keep people away. So yeah, I'm a huge threat. And all the trees that we're laying down, and all the trees, because we did not sign an easement, they're at the top of the right of way. I've got like 7 huge stacks of these big old growth trees up there. And when they were clearing it, I was here and I said, why don't you stick that tree over here in my field so I can use it? And the guy looked at me and said, oh, we're not allowed on your side. And because we did not sign an easement, I've got 7 stacks of trees where I can never get them. If I don't have a tracked vehicle, I can't get to them. But, you know, that's my punishment for not playing their game. I am very scared, and I guess it's hard to accept. I've got my, and if there's no way this is going to be ready in 6 months. It's dumbass keeps saying it's 94% complete. It's actually 55 point something complete. I don't know where he's getting these numbers. If he's meaning pipe is in the ground, yeah, pipe might be floating in water in the ground. Pipe might be laid in trenches, not welded in the ground. Pipe might be laying on top of the ground because they can't dig into the ground because the water, I've got where Miner's Set was, where that little tiny creek was, they plan on boring under that creek. And to do that, they're going to have to drop their equipment about 20 feet into the ground to be able to bore there. And when they do that, their equipment is going to be sitting in water. And once they start boring up here, because they have to bore under Frank's driveway, there's only one way in and out of that driveway. And when they start boring under this stuff, you can't turn off the equipment. It's got to keep going until the bore's complete. So it'll probably be weeks up here with that noise of the boring. And I don't know if I can even video them with, where am I going to send it? I can't send it to, the lawyers. We can't take it to court when they just completely destroy the land up here. We can't take it to court, when Roanoke and Salem's water's cut short. We can't take it to court when we have the earthquakes. And we've already had the flooding. We can't do anything about that either, that they've caused. Joe Manchin's like, well, if you'd have let them finish and they could plant stuff. Well, you know what? They've already said they're going to spray poison on it to keep the growth down. So they're going to spray poison all over our mountainsides again? Because I don't see them out there with a lawnmower. It just, where are they? They moved, it's right out back here. They moved all the topsoil to one side. They've got it towards me. And then when they cut the mountains and slopes down, they blast it and crush the big rocks. And then they kind of just took a bulldozer and moved them over into these 20, 30 high foot piles on the other side. I can't get to most of my property. But for them to plant their pipe, however deep they plant it, they've still got to have a road to get through. So restoration, we're supposed to not even know it's here. What are they going to do with those 30-foot banks that they've made up there? Because that'll bury the pipe too far down. And how will they have a road if they put it back the way it was? I mean, rusty pipe, there's no way they can restore what they've torn up. There's 100% chance it'll leak. And this is from a scientist that met with Governor Northam. He flew in from Sweden. And he's like, with the karst, the caves, the slopes, the rock shifting, he said there's 100% chance this pipeline will leak and an 81% chance it will blow. Sierra Club did testing and said it was a 2.5 mile impact. They're saying it's a 0.5 mile, which, yeah, I think they're lying. Sierra Club might have exaggerated a little bit, but I would go for a good 1.5 mile impact. Just the explosion itself. But now, since they're going to have to do this, they're going to have to build the pressure stations, which are nothing but pollution standing, to have pressure to push this 1,400 pounds of pressure through the pipeline. And they haven't even started those. Maybe we'll get a decent president that will take notice of what's going on.
That's my last question. Obviously, you got bigger concerns than who wins the 2024 election. But do you think ultimately, you hear the news, there's a lot of talk about fascism and the extremism of the Republican Party, and you need to reelect Biden to save democracy. But from what I could tell, Biden and the Democrats are pushing away key voters they need, younger voters, environmentalists, working people, by selling them out. I think they sold you and West Virginia and Virginian residents that are now under threat, living in the path of this pipeline. Do you think ultimately that this will hurt Biden and Democrats' chances in 2024?
You know what? Didn't Biden have all 3 chambers when he got elected?
He did.
But he didn't get Roe into law. He didn't get voting into law. The gerrymandering now is unbelievable. And these states that are saying, oh, well, we're going to change this power to where we get to select who won. We don't care about the voters. I feel like most of that has happened on his watch. He knows he's got a bunch of idiots on the Supreme Court, but he doesn't really want to fix that. We might get a bigger court. So I feel like a lot of stuff has happened under his watch that he can be blamed for. Maybe he felt like if Roe was turned over, maybe he'd have a better chance of getting elected.
Right.
Maybe that was a card he was willing to play. But, I think these idiots are going to gerrymander their way into office. And unless they come up with someone, I am not happy with Joe Biden. And I can tell millions that are not happy with Joe Biden with the Willow Project in Alaska and this Mountain Valley Pipeline. Like I said, I'll be going up to DC Thursday. And, who needs Trump when you have Biden? Biden has pumped out more gas and oil than Trump ever did. And with Manchin saying something about, well, FERC okayed this 3 times. Well, you know what? FERC had 500 projects on their desk. They okayed 499 of them. FERC works for gas and oil. We had the one person, what's his name, Glick or whatever it was, that Biden put on there to make sure it was, planet friendly. And when his term ran up, Joe Manchin wouldn't give him the vote to put him back on, or threatened him. So we're missing one of our members of FERC because Manchin was playing the long game. Right. And I'm sure he's dancing. I think Manchin is as close to a Trump clone because he's always taking care of the people, the wealthy people around him.
Oh, yeah. Including himself, because he makes a lot of money off of these coal and energy deals himself.
Yeah, he's on that board or whatever it is. He's in that legislation. But the last time when they were cracking down on coal mines, he gave his coal mine where it burns his coal an exemption because, you can't hurt yourself there. And the people in that area that pay for their power pay more for their power. And I feel bad. I have met so many wonderful people through this. I was in a rally yesterday with Sam Razul downtown in front of Mark Warner's office. We go out. I'm heading to DC Thursday. And I'm just like, of all the people that Joe Biden just lost, all the youngsters that he just lost. But don't worry, the Republicans are trying to ban voting on campuses so they can't get the young people's vote against them. I don't know. I feel like the world has turned upside down. I have a dear friend who does a lot of droning up here, who works for Norfolk and Southern. And the people that they've cut out and expect to work. I mean, she was working overtime every night because they've cut so many people out of their workforce. And they wonder why, let's make the trains longer and the workforce smaller. And we don't see a problem with that because it makes them all the money. But I feel like right now that we're in Pakistan, Ohio, because we're going to have that event happen here. Not only we're going to have a lot more dead here.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry you've been having to deal with this for so many years. And after what seems like several victories, now to have to deal with this once again. But I know you and the people there who have been fighting this are going to continue fighting it. And we will continue covering it. And thank you for talking to me.
Thank you for having me.